Welcome to the Lead Lamp Media podcast, and this week we're talking web development. So we've seen a lot of websites, and websites can be anything from extremely complicated and huge e-commerce sites, or sites with large databases, or very simple, small sites for businesses starting out, or blogs, or pretty much anything in between. Ben and I have been doing this for quite a while, as far as web development and just launching websites. So I'm going to introduce Ben because this is his first time on our podcast. And then we're going to get into kind of the fundamentals of starting out a website for your business.
Yeah, great. So my name is Ben Noble. I work as a web developer with Lead Lamp Media. So today I've prepared 5 standards for web development if you're going to be building your own website with a DIY builder like Squarespace, Wix, so on and so forth. Or if you're going to contract that work out to an agency like Lead Lamp Media. These are 5 basic, the most fundamental basic things you need for any website you do in 2023. When things started back in the 90s to kick off on the internet, a lot of these things weren't here, like mobile responsiveness, SEO best practices, these types of things. So we're going to talk about what kind of in today's world, you absolutely have to have. Yeah. No matter what.
It's like the checklist, like the starter fundamentals of launching a website.
Yeah, you absolutely have to have these things. There's no excuse not to, even if they take a little more time, because people expect these things. It's going to drive sales for your company. So we can jump right into it. So the first thing is purpose and goals. You have to know, this is more of just kind of big picture for your company, or if you're a sole proprietor or you're a freelancer, all important. But what is the goal of your website? What's the purpose? People think you just have to have a website, but
that's kind of the initial thing. Is everyone just says, well, you have to get your website out there,
right?
And then we see it too. A lot of people rush, right? And it's done bad. It's executed poorly too. So what's a good way for someone who's just starting out to kind of get it on paper and figure out, what do I need for my website? What's the goal? Yeah. What's it supposed to accomplish?
And this is in any venture. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It's good to have a plan. Those who don't have a plan, what is it? Fail to plan to fail. I think this is just as important for website, especially when you're talking about the amount of time and money and effort that are going to go into this eventually. If it's not money paying somebody, it's going to be time, which is important to you and is valuable. So, what you don't want to happen, what I've had happen in my own, experience, is you start building something, you realize halfway through that's not what you want, so you have to restart. It's like trying to build a house and not knowing, do you want 3 floors? Do you want 3 bathrooms? You're building a house, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So getting into that. So is it going to be an e-commerce? You mentioned this. Is it going to be an e-commerce platform, a blog, a portfolio, or something else? Depending on what your answer is, you're going to have a different web builder. There's so many options out there. So if you're going the DIY route, there's Shopify, there's Wix, and Squarespace. Those are like the big 3 right now. And then WordPress obviously is a big one. But WordPress is a little more complicated, where it could be a DIY or custom.
Yeah, I think sometimes WordPress is sold as a DIY to people that are just starting out, and then they get into WordPress and they quickly realize it's not what they expected. It's not very DIY friendly, and they've done a lot better to make it that way more recently. But it's still it's kind of the industry common one where you can use WordPress to start, and people get into it. And then they're in over their heads, usually.
I think it's just so popular. 46%, I think, is the last number I saw of the internet is still running on WordPress. So there are a lot of resources out there to fix issues. There are plugins that help you kind of drag and drop features to help you build a website if you don't know what you're doing. But at the same time, there's a lot of people that know how to build with WordPress. So, there's tons of kind of competition.
Well, and going the other way, if you stay away from that custom route of a custom WordPress site, like you were mentioning Squarespace, a lot of those companies, Shopify, Squarespace, Wix, they're really good at putting up the guardrails for people. And it's not a bad thing.
Friendly.
Right. It's not a bad thing though, but if you have a small construction business, or you're a remodeler and you just want a website, or your wife's going to do it, or a friend of yours, they do a really good job of letting you stay inside of the lane to not break their website, but you'll still end up with a pretty decent looking website.
So it's like kind of safe. You know? You're safe, but you don't have as many features available
Right.
available to you out of the box. And that's an important note. A lot of people think, I need 6 pages if I'm going to have a website. I need an about page, I need a home page, I need a pricing page, and all these things. When in fact, if you have a simple construction business, like you said, it's good to start off maybe with just a 1-page kind of a simple landing page type thing, and then kind of build that out as your business grows, because you're going to be spending a lot of money and effort trying to build a website that, frankly, not many people will even know about until you grow as a business. So you could put more of your effort into building your business so that website has more of a justification for the expense. And then as you grow, you have more money to kind of invest back into it.
It'll scale as you scale.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's, again, why you need to know the purpose and the goal of what your website is going to be doing. If it's just a glorified landing page, like a business card, which a lot of people starting out, that's great. Somebody says, hey, I need a roof on my house. I heard you do that. You could point them right to your website. They go on there, they fill out that contact form. That's all it is. That's a really important thing, but you don't need then a shopping cart. You don't need other features that you might need if you were doing some more of a e-commerce type thing. So,
and then that kind of, to wrap up that first point, like one good way to effectively get started on your first website ideally is, and then even whether it's your first or it's your 100th website, is even just pull out a piece of notebook paper and just scratch a list of things down. Like,
exactly.
Here's the size of the site I think I'm going to need.
Yep.
Here's the basic core functions. Is it going to sell stuff? Is it just a contact? Is it just for lead gen?
Yep.
Is it going to show off my portfolio, videos? So just trying to think of what you like in seeing some other websites.
Right.
Look at websites outside of your industry too, because one thing that we see common is people who are in the roofing industry.
Yep.
If just use them as an example.
Yep.
They'll look up their roofing friends' websites,
right,
or competitors' sites,
right,
and then they get stuck in that same trench of, well, this is what all the other roofing sites look like.
It must be the best.
I have to have that.
Exactly.
But really, it's good to look outside of that. So when you're building out your list off that our first item we're talking about,
right,
it's important to look around at other sources of inspiration.
And the good thing about an agency is an agency like ours can suggest things. If you have a really good idea for what you want to drive customers towards, we could say, well, this is all you really need. So we can kind of manage the pricing based on what you actually need versus maybe these are some wants in the want category. Maybe down the road, 6 months from now, you can.
Well, and we can work within their wants and needs to start.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so kind of moving on to the next thing. UX, UI, you might have heard those terms thrown around, but they literally just mean user experience, user interface. So if you ever hear like, oh, I'm a UX designer, that just means how things look and how they interact. It's in the web development community, we like to make things more complicated than they have to be. But UX and UI design, user interface design. So what does that mean kind of to you if I were to say, I want a good user interface. Try to make it in layman's terms based on what you understand that to mean, Brett.
In my words?
Yeah.
So
if you weren't a developer, and I know you had, you're not as much of one as me. So.
Right. So in my version of UX would be, if I'm going to explain it to a potential client or just someone, I'm connecting with, it's the experience of the website. So any company, whether you're big or small, one-man shop or you got 100 employees, you want to make sure that your experience when you're face-to-face with the customer is good, right?
Right.
So you want that same, good feeling or that same similar brand experience that you have for yourself to reflect on the website. And it's not just from the branding aspect, it's also the ease of use. So,
so I would say like maybe the experience would be more of the branding than the use.
Right.
The ease of use would be more the interface, would you say?
Yeah, but I think what we, like you said, we do a really good job in this industry of complicating things and muddying things. Yeah. But in general, when you talk to a client who's not, you just want to make sure that everything's usable, everything makes sense, it's accessible.
Yeah.
And that your brand and your personality within your company also follows through within the website. That's kind of the blend between UX and UI, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think it's super important. We can't gloss over it because you mentioned earlier just looking at other competitors and assuming that's the best way. That is absolutely not always the case. I thought of a stat that I've heard recently. It used to be 5 10 seconds. When a user comes to your website, they have 5 or 10 seconds to make an impression. Well, now it's more like a second or two because it just the way that the internet has changed.
People's scrolling brains.
Yeah, I mean, the TikTok generation, that's just what it is. Like our attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. So we expect less content in more of a compact way. So you literally have a second or two to make a good impression. Or somebody will click away because there's 100 other people willing to take that person's business that may be just priced right, just like you, but you need to make that, what's that kind of extra edge that you have over that competitor if they even happen to click on your website. So that takes some, work on the front end of getting them to your website. So once you've you've kind of funneled down to getting people to your website, now that they're there, they have, it's that moment of truth. So does the website tell them, stay here and keep clicking, or does it make them get overwhelmed? That's one thing I see a lot. There's too much content. There's just too much noise. You know what I mean?
It's almost like when you go to a restaurant and the menu has 100 items on it and you're like, I don't know what to pick. But if you go to somewhere where it's simple and it's very, very simple, it's spelled out exactly how it's supposed to be, it's pared down pretty small, then your options aren't as wide, but then it's straight to the point. That's how my first impression of your website should be.
Yeah, it's like any run-of-the-mill diner.
Yeah, what do you do? Yeah. Like, what's your business do?
Exactly.
And that should be the first impression of, how do you take care of your customer and what do you do? That should be the first thing they see on your website.
Yeah, what do you do? How does it make my life better? And how do I get it? Those are the 3 things that need to be answered within literally 3 to 5 seconds. So if that's not there, and that gets in a little bit of content, which we also do. At LeadLamp, we generate content for clients who basically don't want to think about content or don't know where to start. That's a lot of people, I know what I do well. Maybe I'm an electrician, but how do I kind of translate that into a way that sells? So a lot of that goes into it as well. But even how the nav bar looks, that kind of thing. There are best practices we don't have time for here, but there are things that everybody kind of expects based on just the way things have been going in the last 20 years of the internet. The nav bar should basically be at the top of the page. The footer should be at the bottom. Just really basic things. The call to action should be in the center or very clear in the corner of the top of the page. So we can talk about those things in a different podcast, but just remember that UX and UI, user experience, user design, are extremely important. And there's plenty of free resources out there to figure out how to implement those things, but we can also help with that at LeadLamp.
Yeah.
All right. Number 3 is mobile responsiveness, and I think this one's huge. Site traffic in 2022. Did you know that?
I figured it was over that. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't. I couldn't remember what it was, but 60% kind of surprised me.
And that's just a blanket stat.
Yeah.
So you do have industries where your mobile usage is probably 80% or higher too. Like depending on your industry, you might actually have less than half. If it's a
analytics a little bit, but your demographic does matter, and that gets into your target audience. Who your customer is, basically. Have you kind of developed that avatar? If there's different ways of doing that.
Right. But, well, we could talk about that another time. But I think you're getting at is like, if your website isn't
fancy way of saying it looks good on a phone. If your website does not work on both a computer and a phone, then people aren't going to take you seriously, frankly. It's that important in 2023 because that many people will ultimately, whether you like it or not, go and look at your phone.
It's expected.
Yeah, 6 times out of 10 on the phone. And I prefer people going to a website on their computer because you can kind of lay out the design a little nicer and things.
It's friendlier for you and Nancy to design on that.
Yeah. So from a design standpoint, we work so hard to make it look really good and crisp on a computer, a bigger screen, but to make that look crisp on a smaller screen is very important.
And not just a smaller screen, and a lot of people don't realize this, it's not just your mobile phone.
Right.
It's my cell phone, Joe's cell phone.
And there are different types of phones, exactly.
monitor and one cell phone size.
And that's a good point. You know, there's not just, it used to be you had two different versions of your site. You'd have a desktop version and a mobile phone version. Now it's literally just one version, and you make it applicable for every single
Unlimited
conceivable
screen sizes.
Right. So that was one of the hardest things a developer to learn, is making it responsive, mobile friendly. So as you go down in width, you know, to make everything kind of fit together nicely and work together in that way. But now that I've kind of learned it, it's very exciting to kind of be creative in how to make that look good. So
Well, and not to belabor this topic any longer, but you also have the old thing about browsers, different browsers on different screen sizes, but now you have different browsers on different mobile phone sizes.
Yep.
Oh, I just hit the mic. Yeah. Sorry, Cody. So now you have 100 different screen sizes and a couple dozen different browsers, and we've run into issues with that too. You know, you can't. We'd be remiss if we didn't say that. You know, through developing and building out websites and launching them, that eventually you don't come across stuff. And recently we had one where Safari was causing a problem.
Yeah, the few people that use Safari.
So, So not to go into a different topic.
It's not very supported. You know, it's just not very popular. But at the same time, you have to consider there's going to be a small percentage.
Prepackaged. Yeah.
Small percentage of people that are still going to use it. So yeah, mobile responsiveness is very important. 4 is SEO best practices. What does SEO mean, Brett? You're the industry expert here.
So SEO is basically, long and short of it, when your clients are searching for your services or brand, are you showing up in the search engines organically?
Okay.
So there's a difference there, and we won't get into the AdWords side of it, but I'll just skim it. So a lot of people, I actually run into this a lot, where people don't realize when they're searching tractor repair near me, if that first result comes up, they just think that, well, that's the first result.
Right.
They don't really realize that that's an ad. Someone's paying to get that click from you.
Is there a way to tell the difference?
Yeah, on the left side, it usually says ad or advertisement or promoted, depending on the search engine, sponsored.
Gotcha.
And sometimes the search engines change it week to week for what it says, but it'll be indicated with some sort of bold or a little icon in the corner. But when you scroll down a little farther, that's when you start to see organic search results. So that's what SEO really handles. And that's applicable also not just to your website, but if you're doing YouTube videos, since Google and YouTube are the same company, it's the largest search engine in the world. There's also SEO for your videos. And from time to time, you'll see videos pop up in the Google search results. But to boil it all down into a really simple SparkNotes version for this podcast is Google and Bing and all the other search engines out there. Those are the two.
Do people use Bing?
Someone uses Bing. We got to cover it.
Ask Jeeves.
Ask Jeeves, yes. So if you're on Ask Jeeves.
There's so many that tried.
Yeah. We'll go with Ask Jeeves for this episode. But if you're on any of the major search engines, including if Ask Jeeves still even exists, who knows? Those search engines are receiving signals from your website, whether it's, or to your website, whether it's from links from other websites or your content that you're putting out, blogs, social signals, things you share on LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever. Eventually, through this network of linking and also you working with the search engines, some of them have like consoles basically where you can go in and submit sitemaps and a lot of technical stuff we can talk about later.
Meaning, what does the actual website look like from a data standpoint? So when Google goes in, and the way they do it is they crawl it, which means literally they just look at all the content and say, this is the content that you need based on what you just asked for in the search engine. So this is the most relevant based on that content. It's a robot, that's crawling all of these sites. It's an amazing thing. All these sites, 1 billion sites, 100 times a second, probably.
So what it's doing then is, I'm going way off on some rabbit trails here. But
it deserves another episode.
It does. But SEO in a small package is you tailoring your website with content and proper formatting to get your search result. Your content. And solutions to those people's problems in front of them when they're searching for that. So if it's lawnmower repair or how to set up your podcast mics, someone out there is writing the best content for that. The search engines go out to try to find that, index it, which means they put it in their library. So that way when Ben goes and searches those queries, we'll show up first.
And that's, I mean,
it's pretty complicated, but
Yeah.
and it's wild that it even works.
I think everybody knows just by using it that being in the top literally 5 to 10 is really, really important of those search engines, those search queries, because honestly, nobody looks past that. I mean, I don't think you do.
Well, and they've gotten tricky now.
Yeah.
We're going to go off on a rabbit trail real quick. But I don't know if you've noticed, but like on mobile,
Yeah.
when you scroll,
Yeah.
it doesn't, there's no like next page. It's just,
It's an infinite scroll now.
Yeah.
I noticed that.
So it's kind of
Well,
tricky.
because Elon Musk had a joke, right? He said, "How do you hide a murder?" He said, "You put it on the second page of Google."
Yeah.
That's no longer funny.
Now,
'Cause
yeah.
it's just infinite.
Now there is no second page on mobile. So,
But
anyways,
the premise is still there that basically, if you're not in the top 10, then nobody's seeing you on Google, and that's 99% of the way people find you these days.
Right.
is through Google.
and through dealing with some clients' websites and our own websites,
Yeah.
in fact, if you're not showing up on that first page,
Yeah.
there could be a myriad of issues from technical SEO
Right.
issues, link structuring. It's not showing up well on mobile, so they're just not going to show you on mobile search results. Your content might just be thin. You might need to write more content. So that's how.
More relevant content.
Yeah, and there's
Based
plenty
on
of.
target-
If
target
you want to
audience.
dive into it, there's plenty of free resources to learn how to do SEO. But getting someone in there that's done it effectively in the past and has ranked sites consistently is also a good way to just talk to them, have them lay out a plan for you, and then move forward from there.
And I think a theme here is with Google and AI, especially now that AI is becoming more prominent. There's a lot of free resources, right? I mean, you can learn anything on YouTube you want to learn, whether it's fixing your tractor or building a website. And you can sure enough expert level is going to maybe not be as beneficial. There's a cost to benefit ratio there you have to consider. So, and that's when you would consider hiring somebody to do it for you. But you can definitely find all the resources on your own. Just like this podcast. So analytics and monitoring is the last point that I wanted to bring up. The importance of Google Analytics, because that is the main player here. Google obviously has many resources for companies and businesses.
Right.
So I would say they're the number one go-to for analytics because they kind of have in-house.
Yeah, there's a few others, and I won't touch on all. You could go for dozens of episodes on analytics tools, but Google Analytics is probably one of the main players for almost any business, small to large, that wants to start out. Some of them get a little bit more intrusive as well as far as tracking, but Google Analytics is pretty. I mean, we can go into tools to find out what sites are tracking you later, but Google Analytics is really, from a business standpoint, is good to show where your traffic's coming from. And when I say where, I don't mean how they're searching on Google. I mean, are they coming from Bing, Google,
Even more specific.
Yahoo?
Is it a phone? Is it a desktop?
Yeah, it shows the tech breakdown of who's coming to your website. So
The country? I mean,
mobile, desktop, browsers that they're using.
well, people don't realize the amount of data they have.
Yeah.
Well, we could talk about whether or not that's good, but the fact is that's the reality.
But as a business owner, it is valuable.
and you accept
So-
that when you use most of these services,
Yeah.
like Facebook. But they know where you live, not necessarily the house. Maybe I don't really know how.
I don't want to know. I don't
But at
wanna
least the region, so you're getting a better idea, and that goes back to kind of the target audience comment
Yeah.
that I made. That's the best way to figure out who your customers are, because if you don't know who they are, you could spend literally thousands of dollars on advertisements.
and you just burnt the
You're
money.
just wasting.
Yeah.
You might as well just flush it down the toilet because you don't know who those people are. So I've heard the phrase like you're trying to sell hot dogs in a vegan party.
Yeah.
It's just not. You're in the wrong place at
Right.
the wrong time. You
Ice
have
to
to know.
Eskimos.
What's that?
You're selling ice to Eskimos.
Yeah, exactly.
And
It's
the
so
other
important.
the other valuable part about looking at your site's analytics, whether it's the built-in one with like Wix has their own
Right.
analytics platform. I do know they integrate with Google Analytics as well. But the good thing with those analytics tools is not only to see where people are coming from and what devices they're using and all of that, but also just this is where we've even here written just crazy good blog posts.
Right.
We think they're going to be hits.
Yeah.
And then they don't get any traffic.
Right.
And they're up for years. And whether it's an SEO
And it's not
issue,
necessarily that you did anything wrong. It's not bad content. It's just maybe the right people aren't seeing it.
well, and then we've actually, Joe's actually helped with this. We've retold some of those blog posts and rewrote them. They take off, they get a featured snippet. Now
Right.
they're at the top of Google. So it just, it lets you look at what's happening on your website and determine, like, is it effective? Is my funnel on my website working correctly? Am I getting any traffic from Google or Bing or whoever? So,
Right.
you know, it's a good tool. It can get complicated.
Yep.
And even like we had mentioned earlier, just to wrap this part up, if you don't know how to install Google Analytics and you don't, you know, you don't have an agency to help you, or you don't want to do it through somebody else,
There are a lot of steps. Yeah.
there's some plugins if you're using WordPress, or in fact, Squarespace and some of them now tell you step by step how to make a Google Analytics.
And
But
website builders do make that very easy.
You're also limited with some of the data you can get from that too. So it's a trade-off.
They like to keep a lot of that data and make
Right.
their own money, so take their cut. So absolutely. I would say WordPress is a good option for that, just because they have an easy plug-in option, just plug and play with Google.
Yeah, they just give you a little code and pop it in.
Right, absolutely. But yeah, so to wrap it all up, basically you have to have these 5 things, and there are more, but these are the top 5 things that I've sort of experienced that need to be in every website. And one is purpose and goals. You need to know what you're going to do and why you're going to do it, because if you don't, you might be building something for no reason, because or not no reason, but it won't be effective.
You're spinning your tires.
Exactly. 2 is UX UI design, user experience, user interface. Why that's important. It's your digital storefront. You know, you want people to walk into those digital doors and immediately feel at home, feel like they're welcome, and that they know where to find you. They know what you're selling, how it's going to make their life better, and then where to get it. Number 3 would be mobile responsiveness, as we talked about. Most people, 60% of people, the majority of people use the internet on their phones. So you got to have a crisp looking website, both on desktop and your mobile phone. SEO, obviously, that's how I would say the large majority of people are going to find you, is Googling. I mean,
yeah, if that's broken, you can spend all
if you have the best company, the best product in the world, and you see that, you know, you see other really great products kind of lose out to cheap products, because the cheap businesses, the businesses selling those cheap products, are just better at advertising, better at selling. So maybe most people just don't know it's a better option right over there, and that is where marketing is very important. All right, so obviously SEO is very important. And then the last thing is analytics. It's kind of tying all those other things together and giving you the data you need to really to drive sales, because otherwise, why do you have a business?
It's almost like the rinse and repeat from your list. You get all the way down to the bottom and you analyze what you've done, and then go back to the top and maybe not build a new website, but make some edits, and then go back down through and figure out, you know, just keep doing that process over and over again. And eventually you'll have a pretty well optimized machine of a website.
Yeah, once you have an idea of who's coming, why are they leaving, you know, if they're leaving on a specific page, that sort of thing, you can fix that page, that sort of thing. That's a good example. But once you do that, like you said, you have a foundation of a website. You don't necessarily need to refactor the entire thing. Just make tweaks, and you could do that. That's the beautiful thing about websites, is they're there all the time. You just go and tweak it. People keep seeing it. You make it a little better. You take things away, you add things, and it gets better over time. And you curate a target audience, you curate your business, you drive sales, you grow. So yeah, that's the 5 kind of web standards for what every website needs. So we appreciate you guys joining us. This is Lead Lamp Media.
Yeah, and if you ever need any help with a website or anything that we talked about, you can always reach out to us. We'll have our information in the bottom of the show here, like somewhere around here. But yeah, so, you know, we want to help, and we're in business to do these things, but we also understand that some businesses are small and starting out. So we do like to try to guide people as well, and just here's how you can get started with what you have. You know, we recognize that it's not always doing a $20,000 website right away. You can start very small and scale. So if you ever need help, you can reach out to us.